Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome inside the Guilty is Charged podcast. My name is Steven. I am your host. Joining me today for the first time is a very special guest, Mr. Nick Cothrel, who is the publisher for Charger Report for Sports Illustrated. He is new on the Charger beat, so make sure and after watching this or listening to this, go give him a follow and check out his good work. So, Nick, thanks for taking the time to join me today. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on. Excited to get going here. It's been about 2 weeks now, and doing Chargers coverage, and it's been quite the 2 weeks to say the least. It's been busy, but really fun.
Yeah, you lucked out in terms of a Chargers offseason to really get started here. You get a Mike Williams extension, a Khalil Mack trade, which we'll dive into. But you used to cover the Rams for Sports Illustrated, right? And so I just kind of
Yep.
wanted to allow you to have a little bit of an opportunity to allow fans to get familiar with you. What was covering the Rams Super Bowl run like for you?
It was unbelievable to say the least, right? I mean, that as a journalist, that's the end all be all right there. Doesn't really get much bigger than that, and just being able to kind of see how the Rams constructed their team and kind of their all-in approach, and then how things progressed throughout the year. They had some hiccups in the middle of the season, losing 3 games in a row, and then just seeing the way that they kind of bounced back, and then really Matthew Stafford down the stretch, you know, he really elevated his play, and that kind of carried on into the playoffs, and then factoring in Von Miller and Odell Beckham Jr. and what they were able to do as, midseason additions, that was really big. And they really were just clicking at the right time once the playoffs rolled around. And ultimately they were able to, hoist the Lombardi trophy. But it was an interesting run there, and it was cool. Everything didn't just come easy for them. They had a lot of ups and downs throughout the year, and it was just one of those seasons that was a special one to kind of chronicle, to say the least.
Yeah, I'm sure that would be crazy. Hopefully, we both get to cover one of those kind of seasons this year. So,
Yeah.
let's get to the Khalil Mack trade. I want to get your thoughts first and foremost because this really is something that I think the Chargers kind of are. Just the idea of pushing your chips in like this is really something that we have never seen from them. Maybe this is something that Brandon Staley has kind of taken away from his time with Sean McVay and the Rams. What are your thoughts as the Chargers are looking to, kind of go all in on this rookie window for Justin Herbert?
Yeah, I do think like you just mentioned, it really is kind of a page out of the Rams book. And Brandon Staley, having been there, kind of seeing how they do things, perhaps he's being a strong influence for Tom Telesco, in doing so. I know Telesco said notoriously that he's not a big believer in these windows, but
Yeah.
this move suggests otherwise. And he did even kind of counteract his words at the combine and saying he recognizes they have a lot of cap space, they have a quarterback on a rookie contract. So I I think he's definitely drifting away from what he said when the season ended, and I just see this as just the first step of kind of their all-in approach this season. Ahead of paying Justin Herbert next year, the following year, probably a record-breaking contract extension.
Yeah, yeah, that's going to be a fascinating thing to look for, especially to there's all these rumors about Matthew Stafford extension, Aaron Rodgers extension, Kyler Murray, of course.
Yeah.
That's going to be a really interesting storyline to watch for the next couple of weeks. So you highlighted today, the relationship between Brandon Staley and Khalil Mack specifically. How do you think that relationship played a role in this trade, and how do you think that Brandon Staley is going to be able to, get the most out of Khalil Mack? Because I mean, he did have kind of a down season last year. Granted, it was ended prematurely to injury.
Mhm.
But where do you think that relationship stands right now, and where can it go from here on out?
I would assume it's strong. Who knows how much that they've communicated over the last couple seasons since Brendan Staley went separate ways and taking new positions with other teams. But both of them, Staley was very credited Mac a lot in helping him develop as a coach, and same with Mac in saying how much of a crucial part Staley was in learning the offense in Chicago relatively fast. Because if you remember, Mack wasn't traded at the beginning of the offseason. He was even traded after the draft,
Yeah.
when the Raiders traded him. So it was pretty urgent for him to kind of get up to speed. So given all that time they spent together, and as I kind of highlighted in that story, it seems like they really connected well. And I would assume that they're probably going to pick up right where that left off. And in terms of how that kind of plays out for the Chargers, this wasn't just a guy that they see a good player and they're like, well, I hope he can work. At the same time, Staley kind of knows what he brings to the table. He's worked hands on with this guy, so for the most part, he knows exactly what he's getting. He's coming off an injury, and that is concerning. But at the same time, he was ultra productive in, before he was injured, 6 sacks in 7 games, kind of showing life of his old self, when he was with the Raiders and even that first season with the Bears. So if he can return to that form, I think this is a home run trade for the Chargers and probably the easiest decision he'll make all offseason.
Yeah, I mean, you get this kind of player for a second round and a sixth round pick. I don't know how you ever turn that kind of thing down.
Yeah.
Of course, we don't know how often Tom Telesco has had a chance like this. Um, I kind of want to pivot here. We'll talk about some free agency things. Like I mentioned, there is a ton of smoke, which you have highlighted between the Chargers and JC Jackson specifically. Sounds like every national media reporter is mentioning his name as a fit for the Chargers. Where are you at though with the Chargers signing him? Because I know that there's he's a great player and all the numbers look really really nice, but there's just always that little seed of doubt in my head as the former Patriot guys are leaving and
Yeah.
signing big deals, and really outside of Tom Brady and Chandler Jones, there just hasn't been a ton of success for these players. So I want to ask you this: where are you at with the Chargers potentially signing him?
Yeah, and that's a great point because typically when Bill Belichick lets a guy walk, I mean that's a calculated decision, and more times than not, it's benefited Bill. So,
It's
that
that
is
comp
worth
pick.
yeah, that is worth noting. But over the last 2 seasons, he's had 8 interceptions in a season and 9 interceptions in a season. So he's just a machine. But at the same time, like for the Chargers' sake, he's gonna net something in the probably the low $20 million range. I would suspect. So at the same time, do they really want to allocate that much of their cap space to just one guy when really the defense isn't just one player away? They need a corner, they need a linebacker, they need a defensive tackle, or maybe multiple. So he's a great player, and he is a lockdown corner. But if you want to be able to kind of sprinkle some other players in, maybe for the same value, you can get even a Stephon Gilmore and a mid-tier linebacker. So that's probably the route I would go. But at the same time, if you land J.C. Jackson, that's still a home run signing. Just like I said about Khalil Mack, and pairing those two guys with Derwin James and Joey Bosa, I mean that's just 4 stars on that defense that could really, lift up this unit from where it was a season ago.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you're hoping for some development from Asante Samuel Jr. in this case too. So, I
Sure,
mean, I'm not going to complain if they sign J.C. Jackson. I just think that there's a little bit of doubt for me. So it does seem like
and I
the
think that's fair.
yeah, and it does seem like the cornerback position is kind of the next domino to fall for the Chargers. So, who are some other guys that you think can make sense on the market if the Chargers do kind of miss out on this bidding war for J.C. Jackson that seems to be happening?
For me, I just keep going back to Stephon Gilmore because I think his value really is low. It's lower than where it's been. And I think when he went to Carolina, he was just kind of hidden. Nobody really talked about him just based in the market he was playing in.
Yeah.
And for me, that's the guy I would go after. And like I said, J.C. Jackson, that would still be great, but he's the guy that I would really focus in on. He's proven that he can be a lockdown corner. He's just a couple seasons away from being the defensive player of the year, and
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think he's the guy that really fits Brandon Staley's style, and in having that elite cover corner, pairing him with Derwin James, kind of like a similar combo that Staley had when he was with the Rams, when they had Jalen Ramsey and then John Johnson the third, really, two lockdown guys on the back end, with one being a corner, one being a safety. So that's kind of where I'm at. I really like Gilmore and what he brings to the table.
Yeah, man, the Carolina Panthers trading for him and then, having to let him walk because they're trying to get for a quarterback just is
Yeah.
a wild thing there.
Yeah, it's pretty surprising, right? Because when you trade for a guy, typically you're going to be resigning him and giving him a contract extension. So for him to hit the market this early is pretty wild.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I think we are going to see these Chargers under Brandon Staley really kind of focus in on the defensive side of the ball and free agency. Where do you think that journey kind of leads them next after going for one of these cornerbacks?
Sorry, you said, like, repeat that question. You kind of broke up.
Okay, my bad. Yeah, I was just asking after the Chargers get one of these corners, where do you think they go next in terms of free agency?
I think they definitely have to go defensive tackle, just based on where they sat last year, and stopping the run. Um, Sebastian Joseph Day is a hot name, as well as excuse me, the blink on his name. The defensive tackle from the 49ers is another good guy.
DJ Jones?
DJ Jones, thank you. Yeah, both of those guys rank very well according to PFF in stopping the run. Now, Sebastian Joseph Day, he's a guy that's coming off injury. And so, that's something to kind of monitor. Is that going to be something that lingers over? But he does have the Brandon Staley connection. And so I just think that's something that they really need to focus in on. Even when Brandon Staley was with the Rams, they really didn't have that strong of a linebacking core. So, kind of some of these rumblings about the Chargers coming out and signing one of these, high end linebackers like a Bobby Wagner, I'm not really buying personally. Obviously, they need to add a linebacker in if Kazir White, doesn't come back. But I don't expect that to really be like their primary focus, early on in free agency.
Yeah, that position in general is just going to be really interesting to see how Brandon Staley handles that because I mean, you could argue that that's kind of their deepest position right now. You have a high draft pick in Kenneth Murray, you still have Drew Tranquil. They really like Eamon Ogbongbemiga reportedly, and this Vic Fangio tree has never really valued linebackers as much as like going out and paying 10 million, $11 million or
Yeah.
whatever the cost is for Bobby Wagner. As much as I love Bobby Wagner, right? But I think that name connected to the Chargers really never made sense to me because these Fangio coaches just don't place that high of a priority on it. At least in terms of free agency, we've never seen any of them really kind of go out of their way to sign a top tier free agent linebacker.
Yeah, and I think that's really just because they want to be so multiple, and they really use a lot of defensive backs. So when you only have at times one linebacker on a field, it's like they don't want to invest so much of their cap space or high draft capital on stashing all these linebackers, and then when they're going to different concepts and they only have one linebacker, sometimes two linebackers on the field, it's like they could allocate the resources better by just stacking the deck with good cornerbacks and safeties.
Yeah, I've been an advocate of that. I think with Derwin James, you have a guy who basically is the size of a linebacker.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
allowing him to play in the box some more often. I'm an advocate of getting a third legitimate safety back there and be able to allow Derwin and Nasir Adderley kind of play around the box a little bit more often, and maybe get somebody to kind of patrol the deep part of the field that way.
Yeah, get like a center fielder that just directs traffic back there, and let Derwin kind of do the dirty work in the box, and let him go sideline to sideline, and work more free. And he already has freedom, but if there's a a ball hawking safety that you can pair him with, who knows what level Derwin can go to next, right?
Yeah, and I think we saw. I mean, obviously you were covering the Rams, but I think we saw down the stretch of the last season that they want to move Adderley around a little bit more than they have been able to. You're dealing with injuries to the guys behind Adderley and Alohi Gilman and Mark Webb, so you kind of have to put him in a box, and I think they kind of want to let him, be able to do more things. So that's an interesting one for sure. I know that, Tom Telesco has, said that they're not only going to focus in on the defensive side. We'll see. That kind of sounds like the inclination there. But any offensive free agent targets that you think make sense for the Chargers in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, I'm really interested what they're going to do at tight end. I kind of look at Eric Ebron as like a guy who's probably not going to he's probably not going to take a whole lot to get signed in terms of how much money that they're going to have that team's going to have to fork out to bring him in. And he's a vet that is a big red zone target and a guy that he's been around the block a little while, but he's also not in his mid 30s yet. So he's an option
He's
that
not.
I'm. What's that?
I would have assumed that he was 30 plus.
I believe he's like 33 right now. I could be totally wrong. I could be totally wrong on that. Yeah, but he's a guy that I'm definitely interested in just based on what he brings to the table and a guy that you can just lob up a ball in the red zone and he can bring it down. It's going to be interesting though with how they're going to are the Chargers going to continue to allocate more resources into their offense via free agency, or are they going to just push that to the draft?
Yeah.
Because having given Mike Williams, a pretty hefty contract, the defense still needs work. So I would imagine that most of the high end free agency guys they're going to bring in are all going to be on the defensive side of the ball, and then maybe they find like a budget tight end and sign there, and then maybe they draft like a running back in like the third round to kind of pair with Austin Eckler.
Yeah, I do think running back is an underrated need on this team, but Ebron's only 28. That's crazy to
Wow.
me.
Okay.
I would have thought that he'd been in the league forever, man. Just like kind of, of course he was a former first round pick and stuff, but man, that would be an interesting signing for sure.
It does seem like he's a little older than 28. I will say that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's a really interesting spot. Daniel Popper seems to think that a Jared Cook reunion could be in the works. I know Chargers fans would absolutely hate that, how last season went down, but I do think that they kind of want another year of a stopgap option while Donald Parham, who was tendered today, which was good news and cleared for football action. And then, of course, Trey McKitty, who they drafted last year.
Yeah, and you'd have to imagine, ideally their plan, right, is for Parham to take another step forward and
Yeah,
what he was able to do before, that scary incident and what happened to him. But, from a pass catching standpoint, obviously he's just a massive target. So if, he can continue to progress and then as well as, improving as a blocker, that would really be beneficial. And, pairing him with like a relatively cheap veteran and kind of having that two tight end tandem.
yeah, absolutely. So lots of great stuff here. I particularly had not thought of the Eric Ebron thing. So Nick, thank you for taking the time to join me today. Where can Chargers fans find you and find your work?
Yeah, you can find me at Nick Cothrel on Twitter, and then post all my work on there as well as at chargersreport.com, part of the Sports Illustrated media group. So putting out stuff daily there, and with free agency starting up, I'm sure we're in store for a busy week. So check there for all the work, and we'll have all the latest Chargers news.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely check him out, Chargers fans. Be sure and follow him. Turn those notifications on because Nick is doing a great job over here on the Chargers beat. So, Nick, thank you for joining me today, man, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, appreciate it, Steven.